Welcome to the Marriage Boss Podcast, and I'm totally pumped up today because I've got a special guest who is, in my mind, a hero. I don't know what he would say, but Dave Sanderson is an inspirational survivor, speaker, and author. His thoughts on leadership have made him an internationally sought-out speaker. When US Airways Flight 1549, or the Miracle on the Hudson, ditched into the Hudson River on January 15, 2009, Dave Sanderson knew he was exactly where he was supposed to be. The last passenger off the back of the plane on that fateful day, he was largely responsible for the well-being and safety of others, risking his own life in frigid water to help other passengers off the plane. Despite the hazards to himself, Sanderson thought only of helping others and emerged from the wreckage with a mission to encourage others to do the right thing. Today he travels the globe sharing his inspirational and motivational leadership messages to help people make a difference in how they do business and live their lives. Dave, welcome to the Marriage Boss Podcast.
Well, Rick, thank you for having me. Excited to be with you and your audience.
Well, you know, when I found out about you, I was like immediately, oh, hell yes, I want this man on my show, because we are always looking for good men who stand for something and really put other people and a mission ahead of themselves, because that's sometimes what it takes as husbands, fathers, and business people. So I'm honored to have you here with me today.
Thank you very much. I'm excited to have a conversation with you.
Cool. So we were talking a little bit about before the show about your shift, from who you were before this fateful day and then who you are now. So why don't you tell us a little bit about what happened that day and how it pertains to what we're doing here at the Marriage Boss?
Well, thank you. So yes, so a couple quick facts about that day is, number one, I wasn't supposed to be on that flight. I was scheduled to be on a 5 o'clock flight, but I got an earlier flight to get home to my wife and kids because I travel so often. It was just whenever I have a chance to get home a little early, I usually try to take advantage of that. So that's how I got on flight 1549. I was trying to get home to my family earlier to surprise them, because we started our day at 5 o'clock that morning instead of a standard like 8 or 8:30 work day. So that's how I got on the plane early. Second, I wasn't planning on being the last passenger off the plane. My game plan, candidly, Rick, once he got the plane skillfully over the George Washington Bridge, got it in the water, my game plan was get to the aisle, get up, and get out. That's exactly what I thought. But when I got to the aisle, something happened that changed everything sort of where I was going to go that day, and probably down the road is my mother, who had passed away in 1997, started talking to me in my head, and what she told me was, if you do the right thing, God will take care of you. Wow. Which gave me the choice of what the right thing was, and candidly, the choice I made, I grew up playing athletics and Boy Scouts. I was always around a bunch of guys and doing guy stuff, and you always took care of the boys. So that's why I waited in the back of the plane to make sure we got everybody out. And it wasn't, most people were moving themselves, so a couple people needed a little help, but most everybody got out themselves. So then it was my time to go out. And by the time that time was about waist deep in the water, and I started to get out the right side of the plane, but there was no room on the wing or the boat because it was already filled up. So that's why I was inside the plane for about 7 minutes, waist deep in 36-degree water, until it was my time and made the choice to get off. And I had to swim because, candidly, I thought the plane was starting to sink. I felt a shift in the water, and I felt water going up my back. I said, man, this thing's going down. The worst place you can be is in a plane underneath the water. Oh my God. The only second worst thing is being in a fire in a plane. So that's why I jumped and swam, and that's how I got out of the plane. But, what really, how my life sort of transpired after that point, yes, it was very hectic in the media, and there's a lot of things that were going on. But when I got back to Charlotte, and finally where I live, and I realized that my company, who I worked for, hadn't called me and or my wife, that night. The gentleman who I was doing security, I was a security director for, by the name of Tony Robbins, had called me and found me, but my company hadn't. So, that sort of resonated in my back of my mind, and all of a sudden I started realizing maybe I was just a number. Maybe I was just a part of a company that if I would have died or something would have happened, they would just put maybe somebody else in my place and gone on with business, which is probably the right thing to do and the right way to approach it. That's when I started realizing that maybe my priorities were pretty much out of whack, because I was all in. I was a top sales producer. In fact, that year I was a top sales producer in our side of the company. But I invested so much time and effort traveling and doing what I had to do to be that. I neglected a lot with my family, and most definitely with my kids and wife, because I was missing a lot of activities, especially with my eldest in high school. My secondary was going to high school, and the third one was going to middle school.
Yep.
So I was missing a lot of time. So that's when I made the shift and made a determination over the next couple of years that I was going to phase sort of my time management to schedule around my family instead of my job.
Beautiful.
And which my company, I'm sure, didn't really appreciate. I didn't miss any meetings. I didn't miss anything like that. But when it came to a decision whether I was going to be at a basketball game for my daughter or I was going to fly to Seattle, Washington, I was going to go to the basketball game and do a Skype or go to meeting in the state of Washington. And I figured I got really resourceful in figuring things out how to do it. But then I made the choice to leave the company and do my own thing. And then and the whole mission was about my mission and being around for my family. And that's what shifted everything.
Wow. Okay, so the first question a lot of our audience is going to have is, how did you manage that financially? Because obviously as a top salesman and a driver, you were bringing down some change. So one of the biggest fears we all have as entrepreneurs is, but when I go on my own, I'm not going to have the safety net of this automatic paycheck or this client base I have and the support team and the whole thing. So how did you reconcile that in your head before you made this move?
Boy, that's a great question. And I tell folks, it took a few years for me to figure that out. Because candidly, my wife has grown up, and my wife's basic primary need is certainty. Yeah. She's always had benefits. We've always had. We've never needed. There's times, of course, when you're up and down, of course. But, we've always had enough. So when she gave me the go-ahead to make that move was when I made it, because I had to give her certainty that, A, her lifestyle wasn't going to drop significantly, and B, she was going to have, and the kids were going to have health insurance.
Yeah.
And that's when this Obamacare stuff was going on, and there's a lot of uncertainty in this country. But, I had to figure that game plan out. So once I figured that out, and it was very costly, and it still is very costly, but I really drove to tell her, you're not going to see any difference. I might see a difference in the games that I play and things that I do, but you're not. And I had to give her that certainty. And once I did that, she bought in. And yes, I tell people, I took a dramatic pay cut. Yeah. I probably took a 100% pay cut. Yep. But what you figure out is you become very resourceful and figure out that, some of the things that I was spending a lot of money on, I really didn't need to spend money on. Yep. And we tightened it up, and I still figured out strategies on how to make sure my kids could get to college. I didn't want them to go backwards. Yeah. So that was my vow. My family's not going to go backwards. I may not be going on the golf trips and outings that I used to do, but they're not going to suffer, and that's a certainty I had to give them.
Well, you really made in my opinion, of course, my values are different than some other people's, but you really made quite an investment in your family and in yourself and in this life that you're living now. Because as you can see, when you're happy and your family's happy and you're all living together and you're connected, you can do anything. Right. There's no limit anymore. You don't have anybody out there judging you or deciding how much they're going to pay you. It's all about you. So if you go make it happen and you make rain, then your grass gets watered. So I commend you on that, and I thank you for really doing the tough job, not only on the day that plane crashed, but also in the years to follow. So I'm very excited to hear you saying that, and if you're listening to this today, it's never easy to make that transition, but it's certainly worth it. So
well, it's interesting you say that. I thought, thank you for saying that. And that really started for me years ago, when I had a new boss came in our organization back in the early 90s, and his first thing he had to do, his first day on the job, we had a off-site meeting in Callaway Gardens, Georgia, and he had to give me my bonus check for $64,000.
Wow.
And he gave it to me, and as he shook my hand, he said, "You'll never make this much money again."
Wow. And
that was like, no one can tell me how much I am or not going to make. And that's what I started taking ownership. Boy. And this, I think, goes back to what you just said. I took ownership for what I was going to earn. So when I made the transition later from corporate to entrepreneurship, I had to own that.
Yeah.
I always had that mindset. I'll figure it out. I'm resourceful. I'll figure it out. Yeah. But I had to give them certainty. I think for people who are in that situation right now, and I think a lot of people would love to start their own business, start their own career, different career, what they call halftime in their life, whatever they want to call it. But they just have that fear factor. You got to have faith, but you got to have a game plan too. Yeah. You got to have the game plan, but don't jump in until you have the game plan. And make sure everybody's in there with you.
Yeah, and two things. One is you did not know what was going to happen on the day of that plane crash, and you also did not know what was going to happen when you left that company. But
Right.
one thing was for sure, you knew you could have died that day, and you also knew that you were now going to be limited or pinched in that new job or in the job with the new boss. So
Right.
he basically gave you permission and gave you wings by telling you that.
Yeah, I look back on it. First, I was angry, right? I
Yeah.
was had anger, but then I transitioned that from anger to, you know what? That was a great gift, because I would have never made the decisions I did unless he gave me that fury inside,
Yeah.
that rage inside to be able to do something different.
So what I get out of this is that the message, people, is that you might not know how strong you are and how smart you are and how skilled you are until you push yourself and jump off. And we're all about big leaps and permission on this show. So one of the things we always talk about is taking a big leap. On December 10th of 1997, as many of our audience knows, I left a lucrative job on Wall Street without a new job. Zero, because I was done with working for somebody else. And when I got home that night, my wife and my first son, who was 3 at the time, had a big sign up, "Welcome home, Daddy, we believe in you." And that was it. My
Yep.
wife was 100% on board, and I never looked back. That was 18 years ago, 19 now. And, it's just what people like us do. We never
Yep.
know, we never know how many entrepreneurs are really out there. But most of us have that spirit in us. And if we're pushed to the wall, and certainly told by someone else, another man who also probably had a family at home, hey, why would you want to limit me? Why wouldn't you say to me, this is going to be the smallest check you ever
Right.
get, Dave? Right?
That my future boss has said just the opposite. Right? This is
Yeah.
I'll help you grow. And
Yeah.
one thing you just said sort of triggers something that, I don't know why there's unemployment in this country where everybody can do something.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
They can add value to somebody else someplace somehow, but that fear factor is what causes people to hold back. So you got to take that step.
Well, what I do when I mentor people, every step of the way, and it could be from, the bottom all the way to the top, whatever you're going through right now, no matter how bad it is, there's somebody also going through it who's lower than you. So you can therefore tell them about it. Tell them you're not going to die. It's not the end of the world. Tomorrow we're going to wake up, have opportunity. And so even somebody who's struggling can teach someone who's struggling more that it's going to get better tomorrow. So you're right about that.
Yeah, my worst problem is somebody else's dream.
Yeah. True.
Yep. So I agree.
True. So tell us now how you transitioned and what you do now with this gift of not only survival and then helping others, but when you made the transition in that shift and your mom spoke to you. Tell us what happened then. What do you do now?
So when I made the shift, and I vowed I was going to go out on top. So when I made the shift, I did it very cleanly. I did it the right thing. I gave the notice and I worked it out. So I still have a good relationship. I didn't burn any bridges.
Good.
But when I was doing that, of course, I was setting up. I have a speaking career now, and I had spoken all over the country up to that point for a lot of different type of organizations, whether it entrepreneurs or corporations or Red Cross. I do a lot with the Red Cross, helping them make, the needed funds they need to do what they need to do. So that was my first venture. The second venture is I was a contributing author to a book. Now, that means I wrote a chapter.
Mm-hmm.
That's no big deal, but it helped build credibility for me and credibility, in my mind that, okay, I have a message. So I've got speaking. I started building the pieces, putting the pieces together. But one of the things I did that was initially I couldn't figure out how I was going to pull it off, but I did, is I got that executive assistant who could handle the minutia stuff so I could focus on driving the business. And she did a tremendous job of that. But you, as other people do, you grow, right? So my next phase was helping somebody help me grow the business, not just let me grow mine, grow the business. And now I've grown to that point now where I have another book out, the movie's coming out, of course, that's around the plane crash, a video product. So what's happened is like you mentioned earlier, there's other people out there who've gone through what I've gone through, who made that transition. I always seek out those, and because my mentor back in the early 90s, Bill, and I told this story today, Bill, he lived here in Charlotte. He wore a flannel shirt and drove a pickup truck, and he became a friend of mine. He was probably 60 when I met him. And I didn't know anything about Bill, but Bill was a very wise man. When I found out about Bill, he owned 80 movie theaters in North and South Carolina. He was a multimillionaire.
Wow.
He was like the Sam Walton of Charlotte. Wow. And this guy and I were just getting along, and I would ask, he would be my mentor. So I would coach people now, like you coach people, find that mentor, someone who can give you those wise little tidbits that they've had, compress their decades of learning down to your days of execution, and now you can fast track. And that's basically how I built this business.
Great story. So tell us how the shift affected your marriage and your relationship with your family.
The shift that I made, I think it really opened my eyes. I'll tell you how it opened my eyes and then the shift I made. So on the way back, when I got back to Charlotte the next day after the plane crash, my wife did not want me to drive home alone. And it was probably a good move. So she had my eldest daughter and third daughter drive with me. I stopped by the office where I was working. I didn't even know they knew I was in a plane crash. And my regional manager said, "You are going to Michigan next week, right?" And my daughters were like looking at me. And, I told them I would. But on the way home, I'm thinking, man, my priorities whacked. Here, I just survived a plane crash. This company didn't even care enough to call me. And in front of my kids, I say I'm going to do something for them. And that's when I made the shift. I'm like, you know what? I'll live up to my commitments. I always do. My word is what it is. But from this point on, I schedule around the kids. So my daughter then was a junior in high school. So I started doing things with her, which she probably at first didn't want me to do with her, but we started figuring that out, right? And our relationship went from head knocking to in sync with each other, and it changed our relationship greatly. Wow. Same thing with my wife. My wife and I, we got along, but you got two busy people going down different paths, and hopefully you'll cross somewhere. Yep. Well, I made a commitment that I would cross every week instead of just whenever we got there, and that changed my relationship with my wife. Wow. Of course, like everybody has challenges, right? No one's perfect, and there's times when things come up. Yeah. But they making that shift and saying, every week I want to spend time with my wife someplace instead of when we get together. Yeah. Changed the relationship with my wife.
Boy, you're really a perfect example of what we want to condone and influence people to do with these kind of stories. So thank you for bringing permission and talk about the movie now. I know that you mentioned the movie, and for those who don't know, it's called it's called Sully.
That's correct.
Okay, and it's starring Tom Hanks, and then and your character is also in the movie.
I will find out. They haven't released anything yet. So, I was really honored. I'm glad that Clint Eastwood picked it up to direct the movie. I think he does a hero story really well, and a lot of the questions I get are really around what what happened that day. But I tell people the real story is the backstory, behind the scenes of what really happened and what happened afterwards. And that's what people are going to see now. They're going to see what happened to Captain Sullenberger before, during, and after, and what he had to go through, what the crew had to go through, what people like me had to go through. And they'll get to see that backstory. So I think people are really going to be genuinely surprised and interested in seeing how Clint Eastwood takes this story and shows people that it wasn't all, pixie dust and sunshine. Yeah. Even afterwards, when people thought the Captain Sullenberger got all the accolades, well, there were things going on behind the scenes with him that he was probably having to deal with likewise, like all of us. So I was very honored. Last October, they invited about 25 of us to go out and shoot a few scenes, and we'll see if those get in the movie. None of us know at this point in time, but if they do, then God bless them, and not, it will enjoy the movie. And I'm so glad the Captain Sullenberger story will be told.
Cool, and that comes out. And now, is your book already out, or you have it coming out?
My book is called Moments Matter. We launched it up in Palisades Medical Center in New Jersey. That's where I went to the hospital, and I wanted to launch the book there, and we donated 100% of the money that night to their hospital foundation. So other people who go through traumatic experiences like I did in the northern New Jersey region will have the funds they need to be able to get support like I did. So it's been out. It's online on my website at davesandersonspeaks.com. We're going to be producing an audio version here shortly for those who are auditory and don't want to read, which I totally understand.
That's me. Yep.
That's me. I'd rather listen to a book than read a book.
100%. I'm Mr. Audible.
Yep. So we're going to be doing that shortly. But I'm honored to have been able to read it with Cindy Wrightson, who was worked with me a few years ago, and she took it on and did a great job of taking all my disparate knowledge and putting it into a format people could understand.
Good stuff. So tell our audience one more time how they can find you for speaking, about the book, which we will put in the show notes. I think you said the website was davesandersonspeaks.com.
That's it. That's the best way. We built links in there where you can contact me directly, and I answer each one personally. It doesn't get filtered.
Good.
So if you contact me there, I will respond there. But what's interesting is you're probably realizing yourself, and I've realized that social media is a powerful tool.
Yep.
So right now I'm doing a lot of interaction on Facebook on my page, Dave Sanderson Speaks, and Twitter. I'm learning how to do the Twitter stuff.
Cool.
And that's Dave Sanderson too, and LinkedIn all of a sudden has become one of my best friends.
Good.
So David Sanderson and LinkedIn, and that's the best ways to contact me because that comes to me directly. The web stuff will come get to me through those channels. But I love to interact, and I respond to everybody who reaches out. I'm honored that anybody would do that for me.
Perfect. Well, we appreciate you coming on the show today. Your story's awesome. I am honored to have you on here now and also have you as a new friend. And anything we can do to support you going forward, we're going to put that show up, put the show notes in. And Dave, thanks for coming on today.
Thank you for having me. God bless you, and God bless your audience.
You too, buddy.